Greetings everybody, welcome to Minn-Tech channel. Today what we have here is a HomePod, the first generation A1639, and this particular unit is showing symptoms of no power. What that means is, as you can guess, when you plug it in, there is no signs of life, nothing whatsoever. And it looks like at first look it might make you think that it has some power supply problem. As you know, the power supply or the power adapter for this unit is inside the unit, and you might think there is something wrong with it, but most often we have seen 99% of the cases where there's no power symptom. The root cause is a barrier diode, a Schottky diode on the amplifier board that needs to be replaced. All in all, it's I would say not a very difficult job to do. Replacing the barrier diode part for somebody who has some electronics knowledge, it is not terribly difficult. What is the most difficult part is knowing your way into this. Opening this up takes a little bit of know-how. Well, I know someone who ruined a few of these trying to do that. But during those experiences, that particular someone learned a little bit about how to get into these, and I want to share this so that if you have a similar issue, you could attempt to do it yourself, or if you would like to send it over to us, we can try to do that for you. But I want to share, so because these are really great sounding units when they work, and most of the time when the diode is replaced and a few things inside the amplifier board that I will share, when those things are fixed, there is plenty of life left in these units, and it would be a shame to send these to landfill. Without further ado, let's just get into it. The first thing we do is just unplug this power cord. So what you do is just roll the power cord around your hand and give it a nice yank. Just yank it out. Don't be shy. Just pull it out. It'll come out. Now putting it back in, you're gonna force it in quite a bit until it snaps in. It's a fairly tight, snug snap. One thing I would absolutely 100% recommend. I'll go through a few tools here that I use that just makes it easier. They are not always 100% necessary, but this one is, I would say, you're obviously not going to get into this unit without some kind of a prying or opening tool, and that needs a little sharp edge, so you can go underneath, and we'll use these in a few different places. And one thing I have done, it is very difficult probably to show with that video up there, but one thing we have done is that when this unit, when you off the shelf, the edges of the metal part here is fairly sharp. So when you then try to slide it in, as I'll show you in a minute, when you do that, the edges will scratch underneath, and what you're seeing as white here is a primer, and under that primer there is a coat of paint, and you will scrape it off. And when you scrape it off, you will actually see it on the edges, and it will look really bad. It will look transparent. So what we're trying to do is to make sure we don't do that. And to do that, what I have done for my unit is I took a little abrasive, like a fine grit sandpaper, and I sanded the edges of it, so it is rounded, so there is a little bevel to it. All right, with that, now let me just get right into it. What I do is, okay, so stick it right under the plastic. Don't go any further, just under, and then push it in. Hold it from the other side. Make sure your hands are clean, and stick that in. And then don't try to pull it, because you're gonna start scratching. Basically take it off or pull it out, and then turn the unit a little bit, and then stick it in again. Now this time it'll go a little easier because you're getting into what you already have done when you stuck it in previously. So little by little, we'll go like this. Just take your time. It takes a little, it tries your patience, but trust me, it is worth it. I'll show you what I mean when I pull this out, and you really don't want to scratch the edges. Okay, like so. Just pull it out. Just push it straight in and pull it straight out, basically. Don't wiggle it right and left like this, or don't try to go like this. Unless you don't mind the marks on the touchpad on top, the control pad. So. All right. There we go. Maybe I should also mention what I have done here. When this unit comes, the rubber piece extends all the way to here, and it has sharp edges as well. And as you can see here, I trimmed those off as well, and that minimizes any kind of pressure I put on the mesh. So you won't see any marks on the mesh if you don't want to see any marks on the mesh. I strongly recommend you do that as well. Now, if you're going to do that just for one, that might be a little overkill. Honestly, if it is just one that you're trying to fix, it's yours. I don't think you want to go through the trouble of all of that. But if you have multiple, like I did, I had multiple of these units, and one of them failed, and that's when I realized what might go wrong with these units. Okay, so here we go. I think we went all around, and at this point what I'll do is I'll stick it in, kind of lift it up a little bit to prevent it from sticking again. What we're really doing is that there's an adhesive layer right underneath the touchpad, and we are separating the plastic top control pad from the logic unit right underneath. There we go. Voila. Here we go. Now I'll show you what I mean. And in fact, you could see these little on the edges, these white marks are you're seeing the primer. So you try to minimize any kind of damage. It'll come out really clean. Put this aside. Now we're going to remove this. There are 4 screws here, and these, most everything all the way in is a T6. Okay, so get a nice T6 bit. That's pretty hardened, nice, good quality. You don't need electric electric screwdriver, but it helps. So it's 1, 2, and 3. All right, let me put these over here. Okay, very good, and then 4. All right, now we are going to be removing this logic board. Actually, it's more the control unit here. The way I do this is I take the minus to my left usually and start from here. And for this one, I have a slightly different tool. You might actually have this. It's called the opening tool. Very creative. But I did the same thing here. I rounded the edges so it's a little round, so I don't put really noticeable mark on anything. And what you want to do is to stick it right in between the plastic outside frame here and this unit. Don't try to lift that. You are going to be as close as possible to the outside rim, but inside it. Okay, so you're gonna see a hollow groove in here. You're going to be pushing this unit on the outside perimeter of that groove into it. So that groove will come out with this. Okay, so the groove belongs to this. It doesn't belong to the outer frame. It might not look like that, but that's the case. So push it in all the way and lift it up. So again, there's an adhesive layer here. When I open this up, you will see we're trying to, like so, and like so. All right.
And then go to the other screw. Okay. Like so. There we go. And then the other one. Okay, get it in there. And you might be able to hear the sound it's making. That's the adhesive separating. Oh yeah. Perfect.
Now I'm going to start again from here. Now we got all the 4 screws as pressure points. I'll stick this in here, lift this up a little bit, and at this point the tool I use is one of these dentist tools. Yep, that's what we use. You don't have to use this necessarily. You could use something that can pry, but I find these to be the best ones because I have a really good view of how far they go in, and also they have some thickness to them, so that they can help separate the adhesive. And you basically slide this in like so. Okay. Don't push it too far in. But there is nothing right next to the rim, so don't be too worried about, ripping a cable or something. Unless you go too far, you're not going to do that, but still be careful and take your time. Here we go, and there we go. And at this point, it doesn't always come really clean and nice like this, but what you want to do is get the minus here. You see the minus here, there's a plus. Lift it from minus to plus. Okay, and when you do that, you're going to see the cable underneath. Here we go. All right, so, and just go underneath here, pry this little piece, and pull this ribbon out of there. So here we go. So this unit, top control pad here, put this aside. Okay, and this is the adhesive layer here. So you're seeing the adhesive layer all around. And be careful with these ribbons. But as you can see, there is nothing. This is the ribbon that is sitting like so. So unless you go all the way here, in here, and pull this like so, it's not very likely that you're going to hurt this ribbon. But still be careful. All right, the next step is these T6 screws that holds this tie. These strings here that gives tension to the top rim of the mesh. So lift those up and then remove these. These are spun around here twice. So go like in the opening direction twice and it should come off. Same here, 1, 2. There we go. So these two. Usually the tips of these become problematic, so another thing that I do here is I do a little lighter action here, okay, and I actually do slightly melt the tips of these. I find that to be much better so that they don't get tangled or all right, next step is to remove the 4 T6 screws that are holding this top plastic cover to the frame. There is a top basket here, and when I open this you will see the top basket. So there are 4 screws here. 1, let's use this. These are black. The previous ones were white. These are little black screws. The ones that held the top control pad to this plastic part was white T6. They're almost all T6s here. There are some in this unit, in this HomePod, that are T5s, but not in this process. They are for some other problems at the bottom of the unit. So here we go. We remove this. So these are here. This is like essentially this stretches the mesh into this top round piece that holds the mesh together. So at this point, just hold it from the sides and simply push this down, and it will release the mesh. Just remove this little piece. Just push this down. Take this out, and this is the logic board. So the serial number of the unit is essentially hard coded here. Well, let's call it soft coded. It's in here in the software that matches the serial number at the bottom of the unit. But this is usually the part that that fails, that malfunctions, that causes the plus and minus buttons to flash. That's one of the failure modes of these units, and unfortunately it is a very difficult, if not impossible, issue to diagnose and fix, short of replacing this entire board, for which you need another unit that has a different type of failure and essentially use it for parts as a donor. So here we go. This ribbon here is, you can remove this by lifting, let me pull it here, by lifting this bottom piece up. You can actually do it with your fingers or fingernails as well. I'm going to use this little, as you can see, this lifts up and that exposes this ribbon. Just pull it straight up. Just pull the ribbon. The ribbon goes in here. You can see the little ledges on the ribbon here. So I'm just going to call this white, and then I'll put the order number and so on. So this will, let's put this aside. So we don't, so we make sure that we put the same one back into the unit and everything matches up. Next is okay, so what I usually do at this point is to pull the outer rim of the mesh, kind of stretch it, because I actually do fold this. What you want to do is to fold this backwards onto itself, and that minimizes any creases you might impress onto the mesh. One thing about these meshes is if you do wrap the cord around the HomePod, or if you do put an, like if you press against the mesh and put an impression in there, it will stay there. It is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get rid of. So you want to avoid that. So here what we have is, as you can see, kind of fold it onto itself and pull it down enough. What we really need to do is to remove this top basket. That's all. Once we remove this, the rest of the things that we want to get into will be readily available to us. We don't need to remove anything from the bottom or the sides. So one thing we check are these tabs. Often they get broken, and when they get broken, the best thing is to replace it. Replace the entire top basket. It'll cause rattles. It'll cause all sorts of problems. So it's very important that these are intact. So the next step after pulling this down is to push this ribbon. This ribbon is adhered to the inside of this top basket. And what you do, is hold it and with your finger push it down. And as you push it down, gradually, slowly, you will separate the ribbon from the top basket, like so. As you can see, this is now completely separated. You want to do this, otherwise when you pull the top basket, you're going to rip this ribbon. And that ribbon, once that ribbon is ripped, well, you need a new one. And that means you need a new HomePod. Okay. Let's get back to here. And the next step is to remove these little rubber grommets or spacers, because underneath there are screws that we will need to open, like so. These are fairly long screws, again T6s. That the easiest way is to push them from top, and then they'll separate, like so, like so, and like so. There are 9 of them. And here's one. Okay. All right, great. Next step is to remove the T9 screws here that attaches the top basket to the frame. There are 9 of them. Takes a little patience. And you want to make sure that you took each and every one of them. You don't want to miss one, otherwise you will break the baskets. And this basket is somewhat brittle. It's not terribly flimsy, but it is nonetheless, if you put a decent moderate amount of force, it will be cracked. And once it's cracked, again, you run the risk of compromising your audio with rattles and so on. All right, and then this is the last one. There we go. They're fairly long screws. These are, I think these are the longest ones in these units. All right, so the next step is my least favorite step of this entire process. If you guessed that removing these screws will free up this top basket, well, you're wrong. Of course, there is a decent amount of adhesive that adheres this top basket to the frame. And the easiest way to unbond the two is to have, in this case I use a flat screwdriver like so, and let me put on my gloves. This is really my least favorite part. Put your goggles on, be safe, and I will try to focus. If I can, I will show you. So what you try to do is to get right underneath the basket here, and between that and you're seeing the woofer here. Once you have the woofer, this is fairly decent. So the edges of the woofer, which is metal, and there is a little gap between the edges of the woofer and the bottom landing of these basket. If I could, if there's a way to show you, it's basically right in here. And I'll tell you one other thing about this. Do not go and insert it, pry up from where these longer supports are. Do it from underneath these thinner ones. If you do it from here, this is where the screws actually are, or the screw points are. And when you, if you pry it from here, you will put pretty permanent impressions on right underneath, and that will make the that will make it more difficult to put these screws back on and line them up perfectly, because once you deform the plastic, it will not really go straight down to the holes that are on the frame. So avoid that. So just go like here and here, but don't go underneath this. This is you won't find these kind of tips anywhere else, really, that I have seen. So I want to make sure that I convey that to you. So with that, let's start. I'll show you the first one, and then we'll probably speed up the video. So if we go in here, let's just start from here, for instance. I'll just go right in here, push it all the way in. I don't know if you can hear that, but there are lots of cracking.
Don't put too much force. You're trying to separate it. Take your time. Don't rush it. But this is my least favorite part of this process. It's a necessity. It's technically, you can remove this from outside here if you can get in between this top basket and the side here, but it is very, very difficult to do, so you're going to cause a lot more damage. So this is a much better way of doing it. Take your time. You're trying to release it, not really release it entirely all at once. The more you do this, the more points you will have where the adhesive is fairly relaxed, and that will allow us to
pull the entire top basket out and put it to the side. All right, so there we go. Okay, I think this is enough. So at this point, what I'm going to do is, let's pull this down a little bit. As you can see, this is a jar. This actually has been separated a little bit. So when I pull this, see, it's coming off, and you can see the adhesive. So give it a decent enough force, like so, and voila, it comes off. And don't worry if this actually comes off. For the most part, there's nothing wrong putting it back on, but I do not need that. I have other methods of providing that buffer. So I'll just cut this off. The next step will be to remove the woofer. Remove these 6 screws that holds the woofer that secures it onto the frame. Remove those. Take your time, no rush. There are some cases where I see that, the unit might have been dropped, or I don't know how it really happens. Honestly, beats me. Just check if there is anything bent in here on especially the outer edge of your woofer. So this is released, the ribbon, and there are 6 grommets here. What you do is just hold it from 2 sides. At this point, you could lift the woofer. Thank God there's no adhesive between the woofer and the frame. So when you lift this up, here's what you do. You lift it up, fold it this way, okay? And you want to get to this cable. And this cord goes down in there, and it attaches here. And what you want to do, I'll show you, with one actually out. So reach in there and press it from the 2 sides, and that releases a tab, and you remove this from there. So let me show you. So what you're doing is, when you have this on one hand, and if I can support this with the other hand, you are pushing against this tab here, and when you push, as you can see at the bottom of it right there, it is releasing it, and you can pull it straight up. And when you do that, it will release the woofer from the amplifier board. Check underneath here. Sometimes this spacer, this little foam spacer or suspension piece here that holds the woofer, lifts its weight against the frame, sticks right here. Make sure you remove it. And another step at this point is to remove these grommets. Okay, just simply pull them outward like so, and like so, and like so. Okay, there are 6 of them, and they are like these little grommets that are not symmetrical. You can see on one side they don't have any grooves. The groove is not entirely around, so where there's no groove goes to the outside. So when you push it in, it'll sit like this, so the groove goes in there. You can look inside here, and when I say inside here, look at in here. See if there's any black marks, if there is any sound whatsoever when you push the top of the woofer. It has to be moving entirely freely, like this unit is doing. So this woofer is in physically very good shape. I'm assuming it is also electronically in good shape. We will see that. So put that aside. These woofers are not available off the shelf, so you can't find one to replace it. If it's just a woofer, you have to find another HomePod that is failed for another reason, such as a logic board failed or something like that, that causes the flashing buttons. That might have a decent subwoofer. You have to open that up and swap parts out. And then next step is remove this. Okay, put it aside, don't lose them. And then the next step is, now we have these screws, and let's remove that. And I will show you one specific thing about these screws, is that as you can see at the bottom of it, there is a rubber washer. So make sure that you actually have that rubber washer in there and not on the unit here or somewhere here. You don't want to lose it. They are very functional components. So this little rubber, as you can see, this thing, and push it all the way. If it is like anywhere here, if it is like here, push it all the way back. Okay, so otherwise you're going to lose it. Let's put it aside. And there are 6 of these. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so this one has a 2, right? So each one of these, make sure that as you remove them, you are not missing those tiny rubber washers. You will need them. You don't want to put it back without that at all. You're going to hear rattles and so on. So it's important. It's there for a good reason. And once we remove all these, okay, there we go. There are a total of 6. Let's put them here. All right, so the next step is now to remove this little rubber piece that holds the ribbon to the top rim, or support frame, this rim. So just basically lift this up. Okay, lift it up. It comes right off, and squeeze it. So as you can see, it just comes off from here. Just squeeze it from the 2 polar ends, and then take that sleeve out. So this little sleeve here. After that, just simply lift this up. Okay, this just simply lifts up. Okay, get that out. So underneath this top rim, there is another piece that holds pretty much everything together. And this is not, I mean, the entire top part is mounted on this bar, the adhesive that we actually had here. But even that adhesive actually holds those top components together. So everything is eventually mounted onto this. And this unit, you basically, in the opening, lefty-loosey, just turn it about, one full turn, and it'll come right off. All right, very good. So let's continue. The next step is, now you can see inside. So this is our power supply here, okay, the power unit, and then the amplifier board. You can kind of see. So this power supply sits right on the amplifier board, and the connector is right underneath here. So the next step is to remove the power supply. To do that, again, this is the connector here. This is the connector. Oh, focus. Okay. To the power supply. This actually comes from the bottom of the unit, and that is coming from your power supply. It directly comes into here. If this is on, do not touch this. I know someone who did, and it's not a. I'm told it's not a pleasant feeling. I don't remove this until I take these screws out. There are 4 screws that mounts this unit onto the amplifier board. Okay.
So 1, 2, focus, 3, and 4.
Let's remove those. And they have, from the factory, they have some compound on them to prevent any accidental loosening, but it usually is fairly loose that it doesn't prevent you from taking these off. It's fairly easy to take them off. 1, 2, okay, 3 and 4. All right, now the power supply is loose. So next step is essentially lift this up, okay, hold it from both sides, and kind of wiggle it as you're pulling this side up, okay, and here we go. And the way this connects to the amplifier board is through this connector. Actually goes right in there. So these 4 screws holds this securely. So before you put the screws, you need to make sure that this actually lines up perfectly well with the receptacle down here and goes right in. So once you do remove this, this is much easier to get this power cord after you remove this. Basically, get your fingers on both sides and press against this tab while holding it from the bottom at the same time, and you can kind of wiggle it and get it right out of there. Okay, so this is the receptacle of the power supply, and this is the power cord that goes right in there. So when you push this, as you can see, that little tab moves up and releases the mechanism. There we go. Maybe close to 100 of these units, and I have not seen a single one where the power supply was the root cause of the problem. It almost never is. So I have multiple of these that are spare. All right, so very good. So the next step is to get this, unhook this ribbon. What you want to do, let's focus. All right. Okay, so you basically lift this up. Okay, if I can, there we go. When you lift that up, it releases the mechanism here, and you can then simply like wiggle this like so, wiggle it out of there. Okay, very easy. Same logic. You can see the edges to tabs on either side. Remove that. Okay, and then we have these tiny screws that hold the amplifier board to the base of the unit, and also they are functioning as the connectors that gives the sound to your tweeters. So I believe there are 7 of those tweeters here, and each one has 2 connectors, so we have 14 total of these that need to be removed. I find it easier to use the manual, the manual operated screwdrivers here to do that. All right. It's fairly straightforward. Just get your T6 and remove all 14 tiny screws.
Make sure you're careful and you don't kind of bump against little tiny electronic components. It's fairly sturdy, but you want to be careful. And there we go. And there we go. Alright. And this is close to the base of the power supply. Let's get these out. Or the connector of the power supply, I should say. Alright, and then remove these. There we go. Any more? Yes, here's one.
And the very likely culprit that failed in this unit that causes the no power issue is, so if the ribbon is here, see, if the ribbon connects here, go all the way across, go straight across, a little right, okay, a little to the right, this diode here. And I almost guarantee you we'll look at it, but it has the serial number or the production batch number, either 1746K or 1748K. Perfect. Now it's loose, so very simple. Just get this, pull this back, this power cord, and lift the amplifier board straight up. And put this unit aside. You don't need this at this point. There's a diagnostics ports at the bottom of this, accessible from the bottom of the unit. We don't need to look or open it at this point, but your ribbon essentially connects to this controller that is connecting the proximity sensors and the microphones for Siri. And just to show you, that ribbon also goes all the way down. It splits here, goes all the way down to the diagnostics port. You don't need this. Put it aside. And let's look at the amplifier board, and let's look at the culprit here. If you could see it, it actually said 1748K, right? Look at that. S560, 1748K. All of the diodes that failed are either 1746 or 1748Ks. That doesn't mean all of those actually fail. It's the 46th and 48th week batches that were the week of the year in 2017, and I can show you multiple of these that we had throughout time, and they're all the same numbers. Okay, but still, let's do the diagnostics. And what you want to do is, okay, what you want to do is, let's go to, all right, let's just, let's actually do the sound here. Focus. All right. This should be a short between here, and it is. It's shorted. What we need to do is to replace this Schottky diode. We'll do that. That's the next step. And these four, I'll just, when we flip this over, I will come to these four capacitors. These are ceramic capacitors that also seem to cause issues over time. They are components that have certain lifespan, and every time we do a no power service, we also go ahead and replace these as a preventive measure that should give a very long and healthy life to these units, so we can all enjoy them. All right, so next we'll just replace this. All right, set our workstation to 500 degrees. Heat it up nicely. If you push that down a little bit every once in a while, see if you actually can get any. There we go, that's better. Focus. Perfect. Keep applying heat. Be patient. So we can actually lock in here. Perfect. Not hot enough yet. The trick is to make sure you don't knock anything off, like particularly this one right here. It's very easy to knock that off. Here we can see a little bit of liquid peeping out right there. We're getting there, slowly but surely. There we go. Yep, we got this out. Let's take it out and very, very, very carefully put it over. We don't want to hurt it. Put the rest off. His dead relatives for a good night rest. Next step is we will replace this with a brand new. There we go. So this is from 2022, the 13th week, that is when it's made. So what I do at this point is to flip it over, and I will put a little bit of, not too much, but enough flux. So you don't want to be putting a terribly high amount, but make sure you put enough on here and onto these little legs on either side. Okay, that should be enough. And I use this chip quick. I think that's the same that Nick uses. I found that to be really well, works really well. All right, so put that on here, and this is our chip quick. Okay, all right, you're not seeing a whole lot here. All right, let's get back to this. I will put in a little bit of this here. I'll try to zoom into this. Okay, and this is enough. So just put a very tiny amount, and I found this to be much more accurate in the way I control how much solder I would need to put on to solder this back on. It's a little bit, but I really don't want my work or your work to be such that the solder actually starts bridging into other components. So this is a good way of controlling that. And put a little bit on either leg. Okay, very tiny amount. The one I put on the legs are very tiny compared to the one I put at the center of it. I put the minimum amount of airflow here, but it's still at 500 degrees, so this should be melting. All right, melted that, melted this. As you can see, it wetted all the way, which is great. I need a tiny little piece again. There we go. Much better. All right, let's turn this off. Okay. And put our rework station back on at this point. What we do is we can put this, place this on here, and like so. We already put flux in there, and then get our rework station again at 500 degrees at full blow, full capacity. It will place itself onto the minimum resistant point, which is where it is supposed to be. So again, be patient, don't rush through this. Perfect. Let's control, let's check real quick. Not there yet. And you don't want to expose these parts to any more heat than necessary. As you can see, there we go. See how it actually positions itself back on. It's perfect. Push this down. Perfect. Let it go. That is 100% in there. Very nice. Very nicely in there. Next step is let it cool off a little bit, but use some 97% IPA with a little toothbrush. This chip quick is essentially no clean, right? See, no clean tech flux. This is the one I use, SMD291. Okay, it's fantastic. I'd recommend it. Yet I actually still like to clean, so I will put a little bit of alcohol around here and make sure that it is nice and clean and free of any debris or any flux left over. A trace amount is fine, not a problem. In fact, it is no clean. It doesn't require to be cleaned, but still, let's get it off. Perfect. So that is done. These ceramic capacitors, there are 4 of them here, and these are fairly simple to replace if you have the right tools. But as a part of this service, we do this as a standard. I replace them because while we are in there, we opened the whole unit and went through this much work. That is the brunt of the job. It'll be a shame to not replace these, which we know that over time will need to be replaced. So we do that. So that's the next step. And okay. what I'll do is, there we go, let's support this, and again the workstation at 500 degrees, full blow, a little patience, like so. Okay. The key is to make sure you don't knock anything else. Like you can see many multiple little resistors and things like that all around these. You don't want to inadvertently move any one of them from where they're supposed to be. As you can see, there we go, perfect, all four are gone. Perfect. All right, we have four brand new capacitors here. And after putting the chip quick flux, we'll try to position these as best as we can, and with the right temperature and the right airflow, they will position themselves better than we could with these little tweezers. Just do a good, as best as you can. Place them nicely and try to make sure that the surface or your amplifier board is more or less flat and not tilted. All right, good enough. Let's get the airflow a little lower to begin with. And they will move. They'll move slightly, somewhat. It's very typical. Just don't want them to attach to each other. Alright, let's get the airflow a little higher. Perfect. Perfect. And this side. I can see it melt and adhere. Might be difficult in the video to observe that. But that is what happened on all essentially 8 sides of this. Alright, so we take this 97% IPA. Nicely. Clean all around, in between. Now this is all good, and now we will put this back in the units. I'll put a little mark here to make sure that it is serviced by us with the order number, and we will test it to make sure that it works. And so we have the date and service recorded there, and before we put this back on to test whether it works, I wanted to let's have a quick look on the 4 capacitors on the flip side from this Schottky diode that's just replaced. So this is the diode that's just replaced, and if we flip it over, you will see the 4 capacitors right there. And let's try to have a zoom in on those so we can understand what susceptible components around those 4 capacitors. So here they are. Look at all the things surrounding them. All these little resistors and so on. And here we go. It's nice and soldered, really nice and solid on both sides. Here we go. Very good. And this is ready to be put back in and tested and put back together. And hopefully this will have a nice long life and have someone to enjoy it. These are really great sounding units. Alright, so let's put it back together. Alright, now let's get on with the installation process. It's the reversal of disassembly for the most part, with a few little changes I'll show. Get your amplifier board placed in like so. Okay. Make sure that this connector is lined up with the ribbon, and you can at this point actually put the ribbon in. Just slide it into the hole. Make sure that this little tab here is up and not pushed down. Push it down only after you put the ribbon in. And you might need to wiggle the ribbon a little bit to get it in nice and square. The line, you should be seeing the line, the white line on the ribbon, line up with the top of the connector. And if that's the case, just push the little tab on the connector and there you go. This should also help line up these holes on your amplifier board with the little screw holes. Okay, next is we're gonna test this. We don't know for sure if this really works, so the best way to do that is to start from these 2 screws that are on either side of the your power adapter connector or your power supplier connector. Don't tighten the first one yet, just make sure that it is lined up. Just do it a little tentatively, and then once you line all the holes up, you can tighten that one. Just hand tighten, do not force it too much. And do it for the second one as well right here. The reason I'm doing this is, you will see in a minute when I put the power adapter inside, when I install it, I'll have to put its screws on as well. And at that point, if it is working, I don't want to take it back. And if I did not put these little screws in there, I will have to remove the power adapter and also do one on the other side, so it's kind of balanced across the amplifier board. Just put one screw in. Here we have 4 screws installed. And then take your power adapter, like so. Take this power cable. Okay. Just grab it with your fingers, and it's much easier if you actually install it first here. Plug your connector into your cable into the connector on your power adapter, and then the key is lining these up with the connector on your amplifier board. Do not push it, do not force it too much. You will see that you will feel it, and then it will click once you push it in. So our connector is in place. Then take your slightly longer screws, which would be these ones, and 2 of them is enough at this point. Put one on the back like so, right here. Okay, and while you're pushing it down, hold that front end, this connector side, with your finger. Push it down, and then take the second one and install it on the other side, across from the first one that you installed, and these 2 should hold it firmly in place while we test. All right, so here comes this is where the rubber meets the road. Let's get the amplifier also, I'm sorry, the woofer also plugged in. It's fairly easy, you'll see how it goes. Basically this tab goes inward toward the center of your amplifier board, and you know where the connector is. Just connect it for now. We want to make sure that our woofer, when it's connected in, is going to be working. And next, you will have to connect your ribbon into your logic board. And to do so, it's fairly straightforward. This is our ribbon, and here is our logic board. Just put it in like so. Make sure the tabs are inside. This should not be, when you pull it, it should not be coming out. And then once you have that lined up, push this down, you're going to see the white line lined up here. So the logic board is good. And then take this one, and we need to put our little control surface here. And just slide it in. Basically, you take this ribbon, slide it in here, like so. Okay, and then make sure it's lined up. While pushing it, flip this little tab on the top upward and push it down. It'll snap into place, and these are now good for our test. Of course, to test it, we'll have to take our power cord, plug it in. When you're plugging in the power cord, you will see it's not perfectly symmetrical. The wider side up here will have to go to the top of your connector receptacle. So, like so. Okay, and you need to push it pretty hard and firmly. It'll snap. You cannot miss it. Once you have that, let's keep this in our hand here. And once we plug it in, this is the time. If it works, we're going to be also resetting it. Push it in. There we go. We are live. And hold your finger on it. It should turn red. And keep pressing like so until you hear the beeps. And that will make sure our logic board is reset. Here we go. And in fact, perfect. This is perfect. So our subwoofer is also working. All right. And at this point, once it resets, this was a little fast forward. When you have, all right, we'll let it do its thing. While it's plugged in, do not touch in here. Do not touch in here. I know somebody who did that, and it's not. Let's say it's not a pleasant feeling. Okay, so at this point, you could start putting the rest of these screws in. Here we go. You heard it. And you should be physically seeing the woofer vibrating. If you don't, then there is another problem with the woofer or your connections. But once you hear that, that means it's reset. And at that point, you could unplug the power. It was just a test. We know everything is working. It's alive. Everything seems to be perfect. Okay, right? Very good. And at this point, I'm going to unplug the power and give it 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Let's say 10 seconds, right? And then about now you can actually remove the logic board from the ribbon, and you can also unplug or disconnect the woofer from your amplifier board. And now it is the mechanics of putting these
screws to where they belong. There are 14 of them. Don't miss any one of them. They are all important. Okay, those are the ones that your little tweeters are connected to your amplifier board. All the 7 at the bottom. These are the physical connectors. So make sure they are firm, but not too firm. Do not force it too much. Let's put it back on.
2 remaining power adapter bolts or screws on, and that concludes this bottom part. And the next thing is now this is something we do for our service. We put a small foam, it's a 3M foam, onto the ribbon to make sure that it does not have any possibility of rubbing against the circular rim that will hold the woofer and the rest of the top pieces onto the base. So like so. And the next step is to get our ring, and this ring, when you're putting it on, this little hollow side, which will eventually go to the ribbon, turn it to the left, push it straight down, and then when you turn it a little bit, you'll see it actually click like so. And this is the point when you actually turn it in the tightening direction, and it will line up with your ribbon. So make sure this hole lines up with your ribbon. And then we're going to go and get our circular support frame here. This little hole, get your ribbon through. Okay, push it down firmly onto the circular base, the frame holder. And then we can put these 6 screws that holds this in place. So when you do this, make sure you have in each one of these, you have the little rubber washers. Okay, 1, 2. If you did this correctly, these should line up with the holes. If it is not, just move the bottom, or you can't really move the top well, but the bottom ring a little bit, making sure that it is still lined up. It's still lined up with the ribbon. But you'll see when it actually lines up with the holes, it won't move. It'll actually, now it's lined up. The screws are lined up with the holes at the bottom. Okay, there should be 6 of these, and each one should have the little plastic, sorry, the rubber washers on them. That's important. That's there for a purpose. Do not lose them. And then
let's get them on. This is just to tentatively tighten them. Not to super tighten, I'll hand tighten them. And here we go. And here we go. Perfect. The rest I'll hand tighten. Actually use this other one here. Perfect. And then do it in a cross pattern like so. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Perfect.
Now, the next thing we do here, before we put the woofer, or before we connect the woofer and put it on, is these islands here. You could maybe see these little lines. These lines they occur over time when the woofer actually hits those little islands, and that causes a rattle. To prevent that, what we do is that we use the same little foams, like so, little square foams, and we place them on these islands so that the woofer actually is somewhat suspended on those, but squarely and flat, in perfect flat form, it stays on top.
If your woofer is not flat or it's bent, it will rattle. So that's another thing that we check, is to make sure the woofer is perfectly level and it's not bent and it is in good shape. If there are some, I've seen cases where it is not. These things fall, they're heavy, sometimes.
Okay, great. Now our little foams are in place. Next step is to make sure we don't forget this sleeve. Otherwise you're going to have a rattle. You'll hear it. Push it down and make sure that it slides into the hole that is made for it. And this ribbon should not be loose at this point. And then the next step will be to put our circular foam that suspends our subwoofer on, like so. Okay, perfect. This is where the ribbon is gonna go. And as you can see, this cord, it will be sitting like so, okay? Like the tab would be looking toward the center of this woofer. So you need to maintain that position. And for that, the easiest way is to hold it like so in position and then flip it this way, the woofer, okay? And then without really losing your grip on the connector, connect it, make sure it snaps in place on the subwoofer. Now it's connected, and then do the reverse rotation on this and then slide the ribbon through the hole, and then do not let this ribbon get pinched underneath. And then the next step is to use these plastic grommets, 6 of them, okay? Slide them. As I showed earlier, these go one way. So where there's no groove on this plastic grommet, no groove on the plastic grommet, that actually goes outside. When you slide it in, it should fit all the way in.
Okay. Put them in. If your holes here are lined up, it'll make much easier to put the screws in and have them line up with the holes. Makes life much easier. So there we go.
And then the next step is getting our screws, 6 of them. It's these screws with a landing on the side. So these actually don't go all the way down. It's suspended above. So this bottoms out on your plastic underneath. And there's some gap between the top and this landing here, where the grommet actually is gonna be sitting. Okay, there we go.
2. You'll figure these out. They're not very difficult to figure out, but there are some things that if you don't do it right, you're going to have to open it up again, and every time you do, you risk damaging something else. So do it right the first time, and hopefully this will not be needed. This will not need to be opened ever again. All right. Again, let's just tighten these. Not all the way with this. This electric screwdriver is actually really nice. It has a very subtle clutch that prevents unnecessary tightening. That's good. It's important now. This step is important, where
you need to put these screws need to put enough pressure on the woofer to hold it firmly down. That will give you the nicest and crispest bass, crisp bass, nice bass, no rattles. There we go. Now this is in place. Perfect. Now we're getting there. The next step is to get our top basket. Make sure all the tabs are in place and not broken. If it is broken, you'll have to replace it. This is, I mean, I would recommend that you find one that is intact. And so the way this lines up is you will see where this ribbon's backside of the ribbon, the backside of the ribbon will line up with this. And if you did not damage any of these holes where the screws are gonna go, see these little tiny little rims on here, if these are damaged, it will prevent your screws from going straight down, and you'll have a hard time finding the holes and so on. So that's why it's important when you're removing this that you do not pry up from these points, but only these long points where you don't risk you know, bending anything. Line this one with this. Perfect. Okay. And then what you need to do is look inside. These holes will go straight in, line up with these grooves in here. Okay? If you do that, then your screws are going to go in there fairly nice and easy, like so. Okay? And then we have 9 of these really tall, screws. So do it with one. When that one is lined up, and you see now this, yeah, see it is actually lined up in here. It should go straight down. You should see the screw in here. It should go straight down into the hole. When it is straight, if it is not, just move it a little bit, and then the rest of the screws should go in very, very easily.
There we go. Perfect. All right, and then the next step is to make sure these actually go into the holes that they are supposed to go. Very good. Perfect. I'm just starting them. I'm gonna go all the way manually. There we go. And then when tightening it, I'll do a cross hatch pattern here. You might want to do the same. Do not tighten them in order. Meaning do not go to, once you tighten one screw, do not go to the next one right next to it. Go across. This will help maintain a form and uniform pressure on the base, on the frame for the basket, and you will want that. You don't want any uneven pressure. And I'll do the rest manually. These go, you know, fairly tight, but do not over tighten. Do not strip the plastic off. Perfect.
Now we need to remember to push the ribbon up against the top basket to make sure it actually sticks in there. Okay. All right, perfect. And then our next step is to put the logic board on. You already know how to kind of install this. We have done it once, but this is where it gets a little harder because the basket is here. But once you line it up and nice tabs are in, flip this down, that locks it, and then make sure that this actually sits. There we go. It will click. So these 4 tabs have little ledges. Those ledges line up perfectly in these grooves. So you might want to stretch the basket a little bit to push it down and make sure it sits firmly and squarely on it. Okay, on the top basket. And we put this on, make sure it lines up, and then take 4 of these black screws, 4 of these that will go in here just to line this up. Do not tighten it. We just tentatively make sure that this is lining up. So leave enough space, because the mesh, the top of the mesh, will have to slide inside this groove. So do not tighten it yet. If you do that, you won't be able to slide it in. But this makes sure that the top mesh is nice and tight in there. This is not the only way, but this is the way that I find it to be the best among the ones that I know so far. So, and then the next step is, let's not forget these little rubber spacers here that go like so, and these will go in these screw holes. They will make sure that the top basket is nice and round when the mesh is on, like, folded over it, that it wraps it nice and square. You don't see any holes through the mesh. Okay, so these are in place. Perfect. Should be 9 of them again. And at this point, now we can unfold this one. Make sure that your rubber spacers are in place. And then you'll take these two, and start pulling them. Nice. Of course, we're not done. I need to open a little space here so that I slide this tensioners into the holes back here. Okay, so just slide it in into the hole. Let's pull it up. That's one, and the second one. So this is where the little tip, the burning of the tips of these tensioners help greatly. Okay, at this point, here's what I recommend doing. Just wrap these tensioners around your fingers and give it a nice stretch. Okay, kind of wiggle it back and, like, maybe right and left a little bit to make sure that it is nice and tight around. And once you do that, then you can start getting this tensioner around as well. That's one, and then that is two. Let's get this around. Okay, like so. Perfect. And then you can actually pull it further. Okay, and then at this point, you could be done with the mesh part. Get this wrapped around these, kind of tied down screws. Flip it twice, okay, in the direction of tightening. Do not do it in the direction of untightening. Just wrap it around and tighten these. Do not over tighten these. These are very easy to strip. Just tighten enough. Tighten enough that the tensioner won't, be released on their own. And then the rest is putting this like you have seen when you opened it. Get these around here, like so. Okay, perfect. And then do the other one. And this will conclude the mesh part. Now you need to, I'll show you, let me put this in first. Perfect. Now, when you look at the mesh here, you should not be seeing any bumps or recesses, it should look very nice at this point. Okay, we're almost there. And then now we can tighten. Make sure this thing is still firmly in place. Okay, and then you can tighten these four screws.
At this point, when you tighten them, again, do not over tighten, but when you tighten them, you'll see that they'll pull the mesh a little bit further down and give it a nice tight stretch, and that's what you want.
Perfect. And now we're almost there. The next step is to get our little control board. Slide. Let me try to show this a little better. Slide this ribbon underneath here, like so. Push this tab up, this little tab. Flip it. Make sure it locks. Perfect. And then flip this up or over and make sure these holes line up with the holes underneath before you press it down. Since there's an adhesive, there's still an adhesive, you know, like a double-sided tape adhesive underneath. It will actually adhere when you push it down. So once you line that up, the rest is fairly straightforward. Take 4 of these screws, white ones, line them up, and do not over tighten these either. There's nothing that should be over tightened in the whole unit. Just hand tighten. There we go. And this one. All 4 are in place. Now we'll do the last cleanup and we'll be done. Congratulations. Top touchpad. Okay, what you want to do is when you flip it over, make sure no adhesive stretches over these plus and minus signs or the sensor hole here. Clean it up because you will see it through if there is. And here's the plus. So what you do at this point to make sure this is lined up is get the edge, the outer rim of this squarely in right here, okay? Like not further up here or not on the plastic. It's right where the plastic meets the mesh. Just push against in there, okay? And then this white should line up with this, of course, with the plus sign. When you flip it like so, you should be able to keep an eye on where the lineup is. And when the plus is lined up, the next is make sure that the minus lines up with the minus here. It's a little bit of a tricky thing. If you don't do it right the first time, you'll do it the second time, or the third time will be a charm. Push this down. Perfect. Push this firmly down. Clean it up. And the next step is to set it up and test it. You're all done. Congratulations. And thank you for watching. If you have any interest in purchasing some of these units that are completely done like so, let us know at Minn-Tech.com. Or if you have units that like this that actually need serviced, and for any reason you don't want to do it yourself, feel free to purchase our services. Just order a repair service and we'll be happy to do it for you. Thanks for watching.